mention, just behind you on your right-hand side was the visitor centre, and that would have been where Mary would have come and visited prisoners. Were you 60s, 70s? 80s, in the 80s. And I think by then you were allowed prisoners were allowed more than one visit per year. Initially in the early 60s, prisoners were only allowed one visit every 6 months. And it only lasted for 30 minutes. Now you can imagine that journey from Cape Town on the boat that you came today, the Susan Kruger, because many of the visitors would have come. Would you have come on the Susan Kruger? On the Susan Kruger, we also have another boat called the Dias, on which prisoners were brought. And you can imagine that journey. A lot of women came to visit Robben Island. A lot of them may not have been living in Cape Town, so they would have had to take that journey from Johannesburg, Pretoria, Soweto, wherever in the country, and take that long journey to Cape Town. Only to find sometimes they missed the boat. They would have to wait 6 months for another visit. If they managed to get to Cape Town on time, they didn't have any place to stay. They would sleep on park benches, train stations, until there was an institution set up at Cowley House in Woodstock, where it was almost a halfway station for women who took the journey to Robben Island, would then stay there. And at Cowley House, many women obviously made friends with each other. And there's a lovely story of one of the prisoners who got married, a Pule. Do you know the story, Mary? Do you want to tell them? Okay, so apparently Dinah Pule and her husband got married on the mainland. He obviously couldn't have conjugal rights or consummate the marriage, so he was brought over to Robben Island with half of the wedding cake. And Dinah went to Cowley House with the other half of the wedding cake and celebrated the wedding at Cowley House. So that also is an aspect of that connection between Robben Island and the mainland. But also just to say then that was the visitor centre. And prisoners would have been categorised A, B, C and D, D being your lowest category, which would only then get that one visit or one letter, or one visit, one letter, and they could read or write one letter every 6 months or get the visit every 6 months. Okay, Michael, we can go. Sorry, I forgot to introduce you to Michael, my colleague, the driver. There's also a story of children visiting Robben Island, and you may have read or seen or heard that only children over the age of 18 were allowed to visit Robben Island. And there's a story by Christo Brandt. He was Mandela's warder. And on one occasion, Winnie Mandela came to visit Robben Island, and it was very cold, and she had all these blankets over. In the meantime, Winnie had smuggled one of the babies onto Robben Island. And in the visitor centre, Christo Brandt noticed that she had the baby. And he then said to Winnie, "Come in, let me hold the child." And he took the child around the corner and just showed Mandela the baby. Quickly took the baby back and gave her back to Winnie, unknowing to Winnie that he had shown the baby to Mandela. And they really built up a really good relationship, Christo Brandt and Nelson Mandela. In fact, Christo Brandt still works for Robben Island today. He had a fantastic relationship. Robert Sobukwe emerged in 1959 as another leader who was greatly feared by the Minister of Justice from about 1960 onwards. Sobukwe broke away from the ANC, the African National Congress, to form the more militant Pan-Africanist Congress. Guys, we will be getting out to view the exhibition, so I'm not going to talk too much because the exhibition talks for itself. I just want to give you just a brief introduction. So Sobukwe emerged as this leader in 1960. I'm sure you all heard of the pass laws, or in South Africa it was called the Dom Pass, which was stupid directly translated into English. And Sobukwe, in fact, the ANC had planned a march on the 31st of March 1960, and the PAC went ahead with the march 10 days earlier, on the 21st of March. And there's debate around that kind of issues, but we won't get into that. So Sobukwe and the PAC decided that on that particular day, 21 March 1960, wherever you were in the country, you would either leave your pass at home, or you would gather at your nearest police station and burn your pass. I'm not sure if you understand this restrictive nature of the pass. You couldn't move from one area, so I don't have to explain that to you. So in a town called Sharpeville, while the protesters were protesting outside the Sharpeville police station, there are versions of the story. Some people say protesters pushed the fence. Others say a dog barked. But the next minute, 69 people were dead. Many of them shot in their back, which means they were attempting to run away. So since that day, 21 March in South Africa is known as Human Rights Day, celebrating the death of and life of those people who were killed on that particular day. Robert Sobukwe, being the leader of the PAC, was charged with inciting this protest, and he served a 3-year prison sentence in Pretoria. A couple of weeks later, weeks before his release rather, as I said, this emerging leader from 1960 was about to be released, and the Minister of Justice feared that Sobukwe would again, 3 years later, mobilize the masses again. A special sitting of Parliament was then called, and at the sitting the Robert Sobukwe clause was passed, allowing the Minister of Justice to keep Sobukwe in detention for an indefinite period. And I'm sure, Mary, you will know, it became the 90-day clause, where people could be detained without a trial for 90 days. And what would happen is you kept in detention for the 90 days, you released, half an hour later you could be rearrested, and your 90 days would just continue. So in terms of this 90-day renewal clause, Sobukwe, and because he was feared so much, he was brought to Robben Island and kept in detention or under house arrest in this house over here, T159. He was then confined to the fenced-in area for the next 6 years, completely isolated from the rest of the prison population, except when prisoners walked along the road behind us on the left on their way to pull out seaweed, which was part of their hard labor. And other prisoners like Mandela, them who worked in the lime quarry, would walk up ahead that way on their way to the lime quarry. And all Sobukwe could do by way of communication with them, because he wasn't allowed to speak to them, shout at them, was to pick up a handful of sand and let the sand fall through his fingers. And this meant they were all the sons of the sands of Africa. And one day they would take the land back. Unfortunately, Sobukwe didn't live to see that day. He was transferred from Robben Island to Kimberley in 1969, where he continued his house arrest until he died of cancer in 1978. This section then became the dog unit for the wardens after Sobukwe's release. I'm not sure if you want to kind of relate the two, Sobukwe dogs, but also dogs, they have a certain connotation in the South African context in terms of protesters, dogs, so just think about that. And these two structures that you see here were not here when Sobukwe was here. They were constructed later on for those dogs, who would then be taken to the maximum security prison at night and let loose in a double fence to prevent prisoners from trying to escape from Robben Island. So that's just briefly what I'm going to talk about. Just to mention also in terms of the apartheid system, whites and blacks could not use the same amenities. Similarly, that was practiced on Robben Island as well. So whether you were imprisoned together, if you were coloured, which I would be classified as coloured, black and Indian were the 3 classifications of prisoners on Robben Island. So blacks, colours and Indians got different food, different clothing, different everything. So similarly, amongst the warders, or guards as you would call them, those distinctions would also be practiced. So the white building that you see on your left-hand side was a primary school for the coloured and black wardens' children. The white wardens' children or guards' children went to school in the village on the island, but again that's separation. Okay, I'm going to let you out now, guys. T159 is the house where Sobukwe was kept in. The building on your far left with the red roof, I think it's T160, 158, I'm not sure. That's where on 2 occasions his children were allowed to visit, and his wife Veronica. Because remember, Sobukwe was classified as the only political prisoner in the country. He didn't wear prison clothing, he didn't do hard labor, he could read and write as many letters, receive visits, listen to the radio, and so on. But we'll speak about that political prisoner status again. On the other side, that building was where his 4 children were allowed to visit on 2 occasions in 1967, 68. They would be brought here to do their hard labor.
Hard labour was pickaxe and shovel, and they had to chop the lime off the walls of the quarry, which was really hard work because lime is calcified shells and stones all packed together, so they would have to get it out. And what they would do with this lime was to either fix the roads on the island, or like Lionel Davis is in the picture here with a black hat. He also worked in the education department. He said sometimes they would just let them make one pile in the one corner and then move that pile to another corner and then move it to another corner. It was just meaningless labor to keep them busy. But Mandela's book, he says that in spite of the fact that it was hard labor, they were outside. They were out of the prison. They could smell the flowers and trees and hear the birds and see the mountain, you know. So it was good for them to be out of the prison a bit. And the lime quarry and the stone quarry where other prisoners worked also then became, and again I'm quoting Mandela from his book The Long Walk to Freedom, says that they were going to turn Robben Island into a university. Not a physical university, but where each prisoner would teach, in turn teach another. And I'm sure Mary knows the slogan, each one teach one, where one prisoner would in turn teach another one, and you would teach that one, and you would teach that one. So in effect, everybody was a teacher on Robben Island, and everybody was a learner. And I think in about 4 years, illiteracy was wiped out on Robben Island. Many success stories. Dikgang Moseneke was a 15-year-old when he was brought to Robben Island in 1965, I think. 15 years later, he left with 2 university degrees. Today, Dikgang Moseneke is the Deputy Chief Justice in the highest court of South Africa, the Constitutional Court. Eddie Daniels, who's also in the picture here with the white hat, who also made the plan to free Mandela and Sisulu in 1981. I can tell you about that a little bit later. He came to Robben Island with grade 8, left with 2 university degrees as well, grade 12 and 2 university degrees. So many prisoners studied on Robben Island and completed their studies. Mandela all himself studied through both Rapid Results College, UNISA, and the University of London via correspondence. Of course, it wasn't easy because you know what happens in a day in the mainland could take 5 months on Robben Island. So if you ordered a book, if you go to the library, you'll get it the very day. On Robben Island it would take 6 months, and by that time your assignment is long overdue. So those are all ways for prison warders to also restrict prisoners from studying. But the cave over there, as Lionel again says, when they were first brought to the quarry in the 1965, I think, or 66, they discovered the cave in the quarry. And I mentioned earlier on those leprosy patients who could possibly have also been brought to the quarry to do hard labor. They could have dug the cave. But political prisoners used it as a shelter during their lunch break. You'll notice it's very hot today, and it's not even hot today. You'll notice the glare. Take off the sunglasses, young. Just take a look to see how bright it is. Okay, so that glare, that dust, all added to that hard labor. But so they would then find shelter in the cave.
This is sort of hokey, but take your hand and make a kind of a binocular out of, and just look at just the white area, and just hold that, and don't let anything else come through except the white. Now imagine staring at that for hours.
13 years.
Because you're at eye level with it, and you can't see anything else. Yeah. I mean, that's what's right in front of your face.
Right. Yeah.
We were down in that cave area, and and I actually, when you're really close to it too, because it's got quartz crystals in it, it glitters too. Yeah. So not only is it the white, but it's sparkly, so it's shiny.
It's exponential.
That's why Mandela was never allowed. You were never allowed to photograph him with the flash because his eyes remained very sensitive for the rest of his life.
Just this picture here in the middle shows in 1995 there was a reunion of political prisoners. Some 3,000 and more prisoners came back. Not only those who were incarcerated on Robben Island, but those who were incarcerated in other prisons. And on that particular day, it was around about the 11th of February 1995, which was also the 5th anniversary of the release of Mandela from prison. they reenacted the kind of work they did to show the others what they did. And as we go down, you'll see there's a big pile of rocks, pile of stones at the entrance. Just behind, we'll see it when we go out. And they said that on this particular day, when Nelson Mandela walked out of the quarry, he picked up a stone and he put it on the ground. And all the others who were with him on that day piled their stones on top to form this monument to political prisoners, not only on Robben Island but throughout the country, people who were in exile, as a memorial to what happened in South Africa. And some say that, you know, that pile of stones is representative of us as a nation, coming together, different sizes, different shapes, in one heap, you know, and if the stones can come together, why not us as a nation, you know. And in fact, Lionel Davis again, and I'm sorry to use him often, but he's just one of my mentors, and I work with him on Robben Island. He says the 7 years on Robben Island was the best years he can ever think of, because it taught him so many lessons. The fact that he had to learn to live with people of different political persuasions, different religions, different class, different color, and you couldn't just take his bag and leave. He had to stay, and he had to learn to live with people. And similarly, I think you as a group, you have gone through that process. Am I not right, Kevin, in terms of the
Well, some of that process, yeah.
Process, but I mean, in terms of that group dynamic, you know, how do you live with people that are not like you? Do you just pack your bag and go, or do you live with it? You know, and how do you live with it? You know, and maybe some of those lessons we can take from prisoners on Robben Island in terms of this group. You as an individual, but also an individual within a group, and how does it play itself out in your life? You know, in your dynamic as a group dynamic. You know, so that I think for me, that lesson we can take that from you, that the fact that prisoners were dumped together on Robben Island, I think that was a fundamental error that was made by the apartheid government, was to throw all these brilliant minds together. Don't you think? And in fact, I'm reading Mandela's book again, because my master's thesis is around that popular education notion of each one teach one. So Mandela talks about the fact that he would never have been able to do it on his own had there not been other prisoners with him. You know, so that collective if there's a word like that, of prisoners joining forces together to fight the common cause. Although there were fights, and we shouldn't glance over it. There were fights. There were generational fights from the 1960s guys like Mandela and the new 1976 guys coming in after the student uprising. So there were debates. But the one thing that he says was he couldn't do it on his own. If it hadn't been for the other prisoners with him in prison, I'm sure he would not have been able to do it. Okay, so
it takes community.
Yeah, it does.